And to another conversation now, we see Zimbabwe's new currency. It claims it's wiped out more than 330% gain on the stock market. That's the Zimbabwe stock market this year, leaving investors dealing with the fallout. The Zimbabwe Stock Exchange all-share index is down about 99.95% since the introduction of the ZiG. That's a short for Zimbabwe gold. Let's talk to Patrick Barr, Bankwa, global investment consultant. Join us via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Right. Glad. So we know, in the U.S., when the dollar is strengthening, we know equities markets normally go a different direction. But now we're seeing in Zimbabwe with the strengthening ZiG, that's impacting the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange negatively. Why is that?
So we need to look at the post-ZiG and pre-ZiG. So before the new currency was introduced, we all know that Zimbabwe has been one of the countries in Africa that has their currency depreciating at a very high rate. So they were experiencing hyperinflation in the country. That meant that people in the country didn't see keeping the local currency as a safe haven for investment because the value loses value over a longer period of time. So most of these investors before the ZiG had to now look at what other options do we have in terms of saving our hard-earned currency. So most of these investors had to switch to stock because that was a better avenue for them to hold the value of their money. Now, then comes the new currency, which is the ZiG, which is actually gold-backed currency. What it means was that the value of that currency is likely to be more stable than the local currency that they used to have. So most of these investors now are looking at the new ZiG currency to see that, okay, this is more stable. Why don't we try and switch our investment from the stock market to the ZiG new currency? And that has led to most of these investors selling off their stock within a matter of weeks. And that has led to the stock market in Zimbabwe, going down drastically over the last 2 weeks or so.
I would say most African currencies seem to be under a lot of pressure, right now against the dollar. Is the gold-backed currency route the answer at this time? Maybe a short-term answer?
I don't think it's a long-term project in terms of solving the challenges that most of these African countries are facing. I see it as a short-term measure. In principle, it's very difficult to be able to do that because the ability of using gold as a means of stabilizing your currency has its impact on the credibility of the government. If the government is able to maintain a bit of credibility when it comes to gold reserves, then that becomes a very good initiative going forward. Again, I think a diversified and growing economy is essentially the way to go in strengthening your currency. So African countries should not see it as the bus stop in terms of solving the challenges when it comes to depreciation of the local currency. I think it's just a matter of trying to stabilize the situation in the interim and looking at a longer plan to be able to stabilize the currency over a longer period of time.
What would you say is the answer, at this time with this currency issue? Is it time for Africa to start looking at maybe one currency?
The issue of one currency for me may not also be the right answer because the conditions in various countries differ. So for me, in terms of the approach, I think that the first thing has to do with fiscal discipline. Governments upon governments across the various countries should look at how they can reduce their budget deficit and control inflation within the country. That is, for me, the first thing they need to do. Again, the central banks of various countries should look at using monetary policy to be able to tame down interest rate and foreign exchange interventions. And that, for me, is also very important. Then, again, we are looking at economic diversification. Most of these countries should look at ways that they can diversify the economy so that the issue of dollar having a major impact on the inflation of the country will be reduced. Then again, we should create an enabling environment for businesses in the country so that they'll be able to expand, employ more people, and most of the things that they produce will be used in the country. That is able to tame inflation growing up in most of these countries and causing their currencies to be stronger than what we are seeing at the moment across the sub-region.
All right, thank you so much. Always great having your perspective. That was Patrick Barr, Bankwa, global investment consultant. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.